أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما اعتزلهم وما يعبدون من دون الله وهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب وكلا جعلنا نبيا. So in our last session we spoke about, we reached the part of Surah Maryam in which Allah Ta'ala spoke about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah Ta'ala spoke about his qualities as being a Siddiq, one who accepts wholeheartedly the truth, and a prophet, and the occurrence between him and his father of when he was speaking with his father and was advising him. And it also then mentioned when towards the end that he decided to leave, and so he said to them that I will leave you and everything that you call towards, and I will call upon my Lord. And so for the sake of Tawheed he made hijrah, he traveled. And so we reached at this part of Surah Maryam. And now continuing on, Allah Ta'ala speaks about the fruits of his effort and the fruits of his sacrifice, and what he gained from leaving, from moving to the side of his people, leaving his people and traveling away from them. What did Allah Ta'ala give him in return? And after this, Allah Ta'ala then speaks about many other prophets as well. Now, before this, Allah Ta'ala spoke about, as we know, Zakaria, Yahya, and Isa alayhim salatu wasalam. And over there you can see that when Allah Ta'ala speaks about Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam, for example, you would think that a righteous father, and of course his wife was also a righteous person, they were all righteous people. And so the child which is going to be nurtured in such a household must be a righteous child, will be like the parents. And likewise when you see Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, such a pious mother like Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, the child that comes from such a blessed womb must be someone who will be very pious, very righteous. But now Allah Ta'ala is speaking about a person who was born and raised in a pagan environment. There's no righteousness, there's no goodness around him, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And so if Allah Ta'ala, if you think Zakaria and Yahya and their story is alayhi salatu wasalam a miracle, then just go a little bit back and you'll see an even greater miracle. And that is of their father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and that they only extend him and his tradition. And so that's the miracle of mentioning Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and his story, that they were Yahya and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, they were righteous and pious in childhood because Allah Ta'ala guided them, because Allah Ta'ala directly guided them. But with Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he was, through intelligence and within his youth, he was a very pious person. And Allah Ta'ala mentions the intelligence of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam in other places as well. And so, going on to the next ayah, Allah Ta'ala says, so when he had withdrawn from them, when Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam had withdrawn from them and all that they worshipped apart from God, we granted to him Ishaq, and from Ishaq Yaqub, and each one we made a prophet. And so Allah Ta'ala uses the word over here, wahabna, that we gifted to him. And wahaba is usually a word of giving, of divine giving, but it usually alludes to a miraculous giving. That what Allah Ta'ala is going to give is a miracle. And so Ishaq and Yaqub alayhim salatu wasalam, from whom came thousands of prophets, they are all a miracle given to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and they were all made prophets. وَكُلًّا جَعَلْنَا نَبِيًّا. They were all made prophets. And Allah Ta'ala says, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُم مِّن رَحْمَتِنَا وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ عَلِيًّا. Thus we granted them out of our mercy. We granted them out of our mercy. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُم مِّن رَحْمَتِنَا وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ عَلِيًّا. For upon the tongues of succeeding generations we did appoint for them a mention of exalted reverence for all time. So the translation which the author is doing here is of a different interpretation, and there are a few interpretations. We'll mention that one being that Allah Ta'ala made for them on the tongues of other people righteous mention, that people will mention them with righteousness, and people will mention them to be honorable people and to be people of truth and people of nobility. But the other interpretation is that وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ عَلِيًّا, and we gave them an honest tongue, meaning that they were people of honesty. They themselves were, we created them to be people of high morale, people of honesty, aliyah, and not just a foundational level, but of a very high caliber, a very high level of honesty and a very high level of morale. And so this is speaking about the miracle of the Banu Israel and that chain of prophethood from Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And later Allah Ta'ala will speak about Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. And the reason of speaking about Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam separate from Ishaq and Yaqub is not to separate them for any necessary reason, but to grab the attention of the Arabs. To grab the attention of the Arabs, because the Arabs the Quraysh are directly linked to Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. And when they hear of Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, then their attention is different. When they hear about Ishaq and Yaqub, okay, well, they were for their own people. But Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam came to who? Well, not the Quraysh, but from whom the Quraysh came. So in the next ayah, Allah Ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مُوسَى إِنَّهُ كَانَ مُخْلَصًا وَكَانَ رَسُولًا نَبِيًّا. And mention also in the book, O Prophet, the tidings of Musa. Indeed, he was chosen by Allah, thus he was a messenger of resolve and an eminent prophet. وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مُوسَى, and mention within the book Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, right? So you have Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, who was raised in a household of idolatry and in an environment of idolatry. And then you have Ibrahim alayhi salatu, and then you have also likewise Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, who was raised in none other than the house of one of the worst people to ever come to the earth, Fir'aun, right? The tyrant himself. So Allah Ta'ala and what his mother was told, that throw him into the river. And so not only was she told put him in the lion's den, right? But Allah Ta'ala showed through this that Allah Ta'ala doesn't need people to give guidance. He doesn't need people to give guidance. When He wants to give guidance to a person because He wants a job and a mission to be taken from them, then He will guide them even in the most disgraceful household, the household of Fir'aun. Even in that household, a household of tyranny and a household of misguidance. And so Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is a miracle in this way, that in the house of Fir'aun, Allah Ta'ala granted him prophethood and Allah Ta'ala granted him knowledge. إِنَّهُ كَانَ مُخْلَصًا, he was chosen. Mukhlis is to be sincere, a sincere person. Mukhlas is a person who's chosen to be sincere, who's chosen to be pure. So Allah Ta'ala this way clarifies and announces the sincerity of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, that he wasn't just a person who himself reached sincerity, but Allah Ta'ala pushed him to sincerity, and Allah Ta'ala made him a sincere and chosen person. وَكَانَ رَسُولًا نَبِيًّا, and he was a Rasul and a Nabi, a prophet. And we know that a Rasul, a messenger, translated as a messenger in English, is a person who comes with a sharia. So you have a prophet who will give guidance to the people, but he will work off of the teachings of the prophet before him or of the prophet of his time. For example, you have Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam, who was a prophet, but Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was a Rasul. So when Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was given risala, given to be a message, given the sharia, then Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam also followed his sharia. And likewise, and it will be mentioned after, Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, the brother of Musa, was a Nabi but not a Rasul, who worked off the sharia of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. So kana Rasulan Nabiya, he was given a sharia, he was a messenger, and he was a prophet as well. وَنَادَيْنَاهُ مِنْ جَانِبِ الطُّورِ الْأَيْمَنِ وَقَرَّبْنَاهُ نَجِيًّا. And now the next blessing of and miracle of given to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is mentioned, which is, and we summoned him from the right side of Mount Tur, and thus did we bring him near for close converse. That Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was given, and we know this, that he's called who? Kalimullah, the one whom Allah Ta'ala speaks to. And so he's given this blessing that when the prophets are given wahi, that's their way of receiving discussion from Allah Ta'ala. But Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, after he was summoned upon Mount Tur, he was able to speak with Allah Ta'ala whenever he wanted to. Whenever he wanted to converse with Allah Ta'ala, he was able to converse with Allah Ta'ala. And so Allah Ta'ala summoned him at-Tur al-Ayman. So one interpretation being the right side of Mount Tur, and the other being al-Ayman, coming from human, which is barakah, that the blessed Mount Tur. And so Allah Ta'ala has chosen places. We have Makkah Mukarramah, we have other places, and likewise Mount Tur is a chosen and blessed place. وَقَرَّبْنَاهُ نَجِيًّا. Then Allah Ta'ala says, we bring him near for a close converse. Allah Ta'ala made him, Naji is a person who you have a conversation with and no one else comes in the middle. A conversation with and no one else comes in the middle, nor Jibreel, nor is any other person involved in that and can join that conversation. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ مِنْ رَحْمَتِنَا أَخَاهُ هَارُونَ نَبِيًّا. We granted to him moreover out of our mercy. We granted to him out of our mercy his brother Harun as a prophet. And so Harun alayhi salatu wasalam was granted to him as a reinforcement and a help and a gift and as a miracle to him. And he was a prophet. He worked off the sharia of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and he guided the people. And then Allah Ta'ala gets to Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam and says, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ إِسْمَعِيلَ إِنَّهُ كَانَ صَادِقَ الْوَعْدِ وَكَانَ رَسُولًا نَبِيًّا. And mention also in the book, O Prophet, the tidings of Ismail. Indeed, he was ever true to his promise. Now, of course, in each of these places, and it's such beautifully way Allah Ta'ala mentions for us, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ, mentioned in the book. So the mentioning of the prophets is brought in front of us, and we could spend on each ayah speaking about their biography, but inshallah they'll come in their places in other places within the Quran as well, where there's more emphasis about each prophet. However, Allah Ta'ala wants us to remember these prophets, and over here Ismail is remembered, and it's a very direct remembrance for the Quraysh. For the Quraysh is something very important. Allah Ta'ala says that إِنَّهُ كَانَ صَادِقَ الْوَعْدِ. He was ever true to his promise. He was a person who upheld his promise and upheld his side of the promise. Why mention this about him? Because like father, like son, right? His father was, and Allah Ta'ala always mentions him. When Allah Ta'ala mentions Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, He doesn't mention him as the father of Quraysh, but rather as the son of Ibrahim. The reason of mentioning him as the son of Ibrahim is that sons are supposed to be like their father, and he was like his father. And so you, Quraysh, should also be like who? Like your father, right? The person who was adopted by the Jurhum clan, who from them later stemmed, they lived and resided in they traveled and resided in the area to Hijaz, to Makkah Mukarramah, and they came from Yemen, and they were the first to answer the call of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam for Hajj. When they made the call for Hajj, when Ibrahim made the call for Hajj alayhi salatu wasalam, then they were the first to come from Yemen, and they answered that call. And so they as well answered the call of Ismail, and they upheld their truth. So now, O Quraysh, where is your side of the bargain? Where is your side of upholding the promise? If you are the children of Ismail and ultimately Ibrahim, then why are you holding on to idolatry? Why are you making the Kaaba in the vicinity of the Kaaba filthy when your parents came to purify the vicinity of the Kaaba from shirk and from idolatry? Then why aren't you holding on to this side of your promise of being a son and the loyalty that comes with that? Your loyalty to your parents, being that you follow within their footsteps. So this is something which drives the attention of directly towards the Quraysh. And then about Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah Ta'ala says, وَكَانَ يَأْمُرُ أَهْلَهُ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ وَكَانَ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ مَرْضِيًّا. And he used to enjoin his family, and Allah Ta'ala used the word ahl. Ahl has to do when there are women involved as well, meaning he married into the clan of the Jurhum, and he guided this tribe. He was a prophet to this tribe. He was a prophet sent specifically to the tribe of Jurhum. And he used to, this family of his which he became a part of, he used to command them towards salah and to give zakah, to give charity. So he used to enjoin his family with the prayer and the zakah. Thus to his Lord he was ever pleasing. He was, by Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala was pleased with him. Allah Ta'ala was pleased with Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. So he used to do these things. So you Quraysh, he used to command his family for this, and this tradition of this family should have come down. But you Quraysh decided to change. You decided to change that. And so remember Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam and the salah which he used to call towards, and the zakah he used to call towards, and how he was in the eyes of Allah Ta'ala, he was ever pleasing to his Lord. And so we conclude here, and further on then Allah Ta'ala speaks about Idris, and we will speak about him inshallah next week, as well as the few other prophets as well. Allah Ta'ala gives us understanding of the ayat. Sadaqallahu al-Azim, subhanallahi bihamdihi, subhanallahi bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka Allahumma wa atubu ilayk.